So the Behemoth have created 5 games, and I, like many others, believe that all of these games share the same universe. But I believe I've created a timeline that not only makes sense, but also has a story to go with it. So sit back, put on your tinfoil hat, because this is the timeline to the Behemoth games. The timeline begins with the Castle Crashers. Yes, Castle Crashers. So we actually have no idea when Castle Crashers takes place, but it's safe to assume that it's set during the medieval time. So why do I think Castle Crashers comes first? Well, it's all because of this crystal right here. No, seriously. So the evil wizard steals the king's crystal. This turns it from white to red. But why? Why does the crystal turn red? Well, to answer this question, let's look at the evil wizard boss fight. At the start of the fight, we see the crystal is bright red, but as we defeat each wave of the wizard, the crystal slowly loses its colour, and by the end of the fight, the crystal is barely red. Upon defeating the evil wizard, the crystal goes back to white. So what does this mean? Well, I believe the crystal is being used by the wizard to store his life. So when the crystal's in its idle state, it will be white. But when it turns to red, that's the evil wizard putting in his soul/life into the crystal. This explains why the crystal slowly loses its colour as the wizard gets weaker. And at the end of the game, we know that the crystal gets returned to the king, now in its idle white state. But potentially not every part of the evil wizard is gone from the crystal. Battleblock Theater is our next game. Now it isn't 100% sure when it takes place, but we can get a rough estimate. We can see the Titanic boat when the creator of the theatre was alive. The Titanic was built in 1909 and sunk in 1912, so to keep things simple, let's call it 1910. We also see footage of Hattie. We get a month and a day, but no year. The footage then fast forwards for a full 5.5 years. So with everything taken into account, I would guess Battleblock Theater takes place between 1975 and 1980. That's because in Pit People, we see a spacecraft that looks awfully similar to the space shuttles that were introduced in 1980, give or take. So the story goes that Hattie and his friends set sail on a boat, looking for adventure. Hattie is a great guy, loved by everyone. The narrator continues as storm hits the boats, crashing them all on an island. This island holds the theatre. Inside, it is revealed that there are large cat creatures wearing security uniforms. They capture Hattie, forcing him to wear a mysterious hat. This hat glows red as Hattie begins to cry, zapping his friends with red magic. The player is then captured by the cats and forced to perform in dangerous death games. Now, what I'm going to say might seem crazy, but I believe that part of the Castle Crashers crystal is inside Hattie's hat. But how, you may ask? Well, I believe that the evil wizard's influence was not fully drained from the crystal. A small part of him remained inside, kind of like a virus. A part of this crystal eventually found its way into the hat, and when someone wears the hat, the wizard's soul takes over the host. We can see this happen when Hattie wears the hat for the first time. It almost looks like he's getting possessed by red magic. And who just so happens to use red magic? So the evil wizard's infected Hattie and is now using Hattie's body as a host. But Hattie isn't dead. Instead, he's in a vegetative state.
So your best friend's a vegetable now.
That's why I believe Hattie is always crying. He's trapped within his own body. Now, why would the evil wizard do all this? Well, I believe the wizard is trying to resurrect himself. That's why he stole the crystal in Castle Crashers. He's looking for eternal life. In Castle Crashers, we see that the wizard can summon cult minions, enemies that look remarkably similar to the evil wizard. I believe these to be failed experiments, clones of the evil wizard, but he couldn't figure out how to transfer himself into one of these bodies. So throughout Battleblock, Hattie doesn't move. He's completely lifeless. But why? Well, we know that people in the past have died within few days of wearing the hat.
And during the show, Furbottom passed away, having pooped himself to death on the way to the bathroom.
Maybe due to them not being a match for the wizard, but Hattie has been seen to live for years. And when the hat was first put on, the wizard seemed to have control, but I believe Hattie fought back. Although in a vegetative state, he's not allowing the wizard to take over his body. One important detail I want to point out is Furbottom is seen not to be wearing the hat in his picture. And what colour is this hat? Green, the colour of good. I believe Furbottom got this hat and used its powers to create the cats, theatre and everything. He was a good man, hence the green colour of the crystal. But on the theatre's grand opening, he finally put on the hat and only a couple days later died. This left the cats with no leader, not knowing what to do. But they did know one thing. The hat created them, and it's what their leader wore. So the cats grabbed the hat and found someone else to wear it, hoping they can bring back Furbottom, or at the very least, have a leader like him. But each person who wore the hat got corrupted. With the evil wizard trying to enter their body, they died. As the cats got more desperate, they started giving the hat to anyone. Fish people, sock puppets. But their next victim was going to be Honeyhug, a large cosmic bear, who is believed to be the narrator of the game. But for unknown reasons, the bear escaped, now watching over the theatre. Now this is where Hattie comes in. I believe that everything that occurs in the game is a direct result of Honeyhug. Since he's believed to be the narrator, it means anything he says can and will happen, just like a story.
But the eye of the storm is very misleading, children. Never turn your back on it because the ocean was all like, psych! And it came back even bigger this time, twice as big.
That's why the narration in the game seems so random. Honeyhug is just watching and making a story as he goes. He's the one responsible for the boat to crash at the beginning. He's the one responsible for Hattie's corruption, and he's the one responsible for our imprisonment. At the end of the game, we hear the narrator say this.
So your best friend's a vegetable now, blah blah blah.
He speaks as if nothing mattered. It's all just a story to him. It doesn't affect him. But in reality, many people died. Lives have been ruined. Honeyhug then makes waves and knocks Hattie off the boat, just like he did at the start of the game. Songs play as Hattie sinks to the bottom of the ocean, and with a song over, Huggy Hug's story ends. But by sheer chance, the hat lands on Hattie's head once more, but this time, a green light emits instead of red. Green, the colour of good. This goodness comes from Hattie, who was always described as being a great guy that everyone loved. I believe Hattie's soul transferred to the hat that houses the crystal.
Where's he gone to? Where?
But how? I assume the way it all works is the evil wizard enters a host once they put on the hat, and when the host dies, the evil wizard's soul returns to the crystal, waiting for the next host. But with Hattie, the wizard is trapped, stuck inside his body. This allowed Hattie to transfer his soul to the crystal instead. So at the bottom of the ocean, Hattie uses the hat to launch a beam of energy into space, killing the bear who brought them to the island, killing the bear who caused all of this. But this would soon turn out to have dire consequences. Okay, so I'm halfway through editing this and I just realised that Hattie's eyes have moons in them, and the evil wizard symbol is a moon. And at this point in the timeline, the evil wizard is trapped in Hattie's body. Like, am I going insane? The next game is Pit People, which is confirmed to be the direct sequel to Battleblock. But believe it or not, Pit People isn't really canon in the grand scheme of things. Let me explain. So after Honeyhug's death, it's revealed that there were a second bear called Honeykiss. These two bears were dating. After being shot by the beam, Honeyhug's body smashes into Earth, fragmenting it. You play as Horatio, and in response to Honeyhug's death, Honeykiss kidnaps Horatio's child. And so Horatio must try and get his son back. Anyway, at the end of the game, Honeykiss grabs Hattie from the ocean, and using the crystal, destroys everything. But a speckled horse who Horatio freed comes and allows him to make one wish. Horatio wishes for everything to start again, so Pit People restarts from the beginning, but this time, knowing what to do, Horatio saves everyone. In this new timeline, Honeyhug is still dead and the Earth is fragmented, but the speckled horse then visits Honeykiss and allows her to grant one wish. Honeykiss wishes for Honeyhug back, so yeah, in the grand scheme of things, Pit People never really happened. The next game in the timeline is Alien Hominid, which is set in 2004. Now I've already explained the story of both Alien Hominid and Alien Hominid Invasion, which you can watch here. So instead of repeating myself, I'll just explain why it's next in the timeline. At the end of the game, we fight a big buff alien hominid. I believe this to be the alien prisoner seen in Castle Crashers, who, if you remember, escaped the alien's UFO and ejected into the desert. And where do we eventually fight this alien? In Area 51, found in a desert and accompanied by scorpions and antlions. This would also explain why the alien seems to be working with the humans, as he's wanted by his own kind. Also on this UFO is Install Ball and the Little Blue Alien, who are both present in Alien Hominid. But there's one really interesting detail which helped me make this entire timeline, and it's found in a flashback from Alien Hominid Invasion. We see the same cinematic intro as Alien Hominid, but the Behemoth added an extra scene in this flashback. We actually see the weapon that shot the laser. Now, out of every single possible design the Behemoth could have chose for the weapon, they went with this. And what does this weapon shoot? A large green laser. Just like Hattie's hat. So I believe the FBI managed to find Hattie's hat and use it to make their laser weapon. Now I may just be too deep into my tinfoil hat, but why would they add this extra scene to the flashback? I believe it's to help create the timeline. As when the Behemoth was making Alien Hominid all the way back in 2004, they were most likely not thinking about future stories, timelines or games, meaning they now have the chance to add important details in these flashbacks. And this leads us to our final game. So Alien Hominid Invasion is set in present day and is confirmed to be the sequel of Alien Hominid. Now this is what I believe to be the timeline of the Behemoth games, but I wanted to take a minute to explain some counter-arguments that may come up. First of all, Hattie is in Castle Crashers, but how can he be in Castle Crashers if it takes place before Battleblock? Well, this is where things kinda get confusing. So the Behemoth love their references and Easter eggs, but with that, it's hard to tell what's a reference and what's canon. But I firmly believe that Hattie is not canon in Castle Crashers. This is because to get Hattie on the PC version, you must own Battleblock Theater. That's the only way. This is unlike the console version where you can purchase him from a statue in the Insane Store. If Hattie was canon, and presumably an important piece to the Behemoth timeline, then he should have been available in the Insane Store on PC. So with that, I believe this to just be a crossover, similar to Castle Crashers characters appearing in Battleblock. Another counter-argument is the guy who wanted to create super bats in Battleblock Theater.
This quirky fellow, he owns a bat farm back home, and his lifelong dream is to breed a terrifying race of super bats. None of which makes any sense, of course, because he's absolutely terrified of bats.
Obviously referring to PP Strello. Well, I believe this to just be a reference, as it never says he accomplished his dream, only that he wanted to. And one final argument may be the technology in each game. As Castle Crashers is set in medieval times, Battleblock Theater seems to be somewhere in the 1900s, and Pit People is back in medieval times. Well, firstly, you have to remember that this is a fantasy world, not following the same rules as real life. This is why we can see machines and mechanical creations in Industrial Castle. But also, if you look at the introduction to Pit People, we can clearly see a helicopter that looks quite advanced, and also, there's a spacecraft. With the ending Alien Hominid Invasion left, it seems clear that the Behemoth will continue the present day story, so we may see a third Alien Hominid game. But who knows? We may get a Castle Crashers 2, explaining the origins of the crystal or how it ended up in Hattie's hat. But either way, it's been really fun piecing this timeline together. If you have anything to add or maybe any arguments, do let me know in the comments below. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.